It's outrageous to me, actually, that we sit complacently and have 60% of our kids, after we spend so much per student, not being able to be college or career ready.
Children wake up every day and are assigned to a school based on their zip code that is completely underperforming, completely ruining their life.
Everything about public education ought to start and end with the interests of parents and their kids.
There is no way the movement would have come as far as it has today without Jeannie Allen and a CER.
Jeannie was the Center for Education Reform before there was education reform.
Center for Education Reform is the leading advocate for school change substantively across the system. Our focus is and has always been on choice and accountability. We push, cajole, and lead to get there.
CER has been the voice of what is happening in America on reform.
They provided a lot of education and information to us early on. I mean, they were the pioneers.
It's always been a place where you could go to get the best information and the best strategies around policy.
They gather information, they establish their goals and objectives of what is education reform based on a child's, a parent's perspective.
They're going to be pushing what is in the best interest of kids.
Questions of policy, questions of school practice, all the debates around education reform. CER is always going to drive in with a hard wedge representing the interests of parents.
We need an organization that when the opponents come out with negative articles or incorrect articles, we need someone who, number one, is not afraid to take them on, but takes them on in a way that allows us to be successful in combating the kind of lies and distortions that are out there.
The worst thing can happen is that you're in a committee meeting or advocating as a governor policy changes, and it's based on a set of facts that may not be accurate. Jeannie and CER have proven themselves to be a place of great integrity.
You need organizations like CER that will take on what becomes accepted, repetitive view that is oftentimes wrong.
Our brand and approach actually does move the needle, and they like the fact that we are willing to, bump heads with people.
Social change doesn't happen without conflict. CER gets this. They understand that in order to change the world, you have to make sure you're speaking truth to power.
Unless there are advocates out there willing to fight for the rights of parents to be able to choose any school that works best for them, we're going to continue with the kind of schooling we've had for the last 50 to 75 years, and we know where that's gotten us. It's really important that donors understand the need to support groups like CER.
A lot of what we do is leadership, and it's advocacy, and it's phone calls, and it's behind the scenes, and it's hard for a lot of people to understand. It's certainly hard for program directors to convince their board to approve a grant to the center.
And you have to lay the foundation, you have to plant the seeds. And CER has been planting seeds all over the country for the past 2 decades.
It has provided assets for a lot of people who needed to understand what their work was.
If you want to make a difference, if you're an individual that has the ability to make a contribution.
Anybody who really wants to make an impact on our public school education.
Education's the place to do it.
You can invest in charter schools or parochial schools, schools that provide the service for the children. We won't be able to have these schools if we don't have a national organization that looks out for our interests, that is advocating for our children and our position.
I can't think of a better gift to give America, the world, kids, families, to change the world than to a place like Center for Education Reform.
What our donors do for us is actually more extraordinary than most, because I don't have a school that I can point to that say, look what I did. I don't have a kid who you're directly helping.
The more people would give, the less time they probably would have to spend on raising funds, which would mean they could help us more.
This is a worthwhile investment.
It's important for donors that are interested in making a difference to realize that over the long haul there couldn't be a better investment.
So philanthropists, people that want to help and want to do good for the community and the country really should be engaged in this thing called education reform, and there is no organization like CER.
The Center for Education Reform has a set of passions and principles around what's best. Jeannie's relentless at protecting and preserving the idea.
Across the spectrum of policy and of political action, CER has been there as the go-to place.
This is an organization that understands the importance of policy, that realizes that in this policy arena, you have to combat lies and distortions. You have to be able to come back at this with truth.
And until we get control of policy and politics and people all the time, until we have all those things connected helping kids, it's always going to be more difficult than we imagine.
There should be a sense of urgency about this. This is perhaps our greatest challenge and our greatest opportunity to fix.
Nobody wants to abolish our public schools as they currently exist, but in an environment where those public schools are not providing mom and dad with the right choice, we want to be able to offer something else.
Change is the hardest thing to come in public education.
We can't stop to say, oh, you know, look what we brought to the table. Yeah, we brought that to the table, but hey, we got so much more to bring.
I can't imagine the movement in America without the Center for Education Reform.
The most important thing about the future of CER is that we'll have the same consistent mission. It will use sort of the tools and all of the resources that we've gained over time.
Organizations that stay around for the long term, you know, that aren't just in this fight for small political victories, that are in it for the long term. There's a lot to be said for that. And having organizations like CER that we know are going to be here is a huge, huge comfort, I think, to those of us who are in the movement.
Take the lessons we've learned from our past, our past 2 decades, and really try and accelerate what we've learned for the next generation of reformers.
We need to see dramatic, aggressive reform, and that includes making some noise and finding some conflict.
Power of ideas implemented faithfully can change the world.
We helped give a voice and credibility to something that did sound crazy by demonstrating that actually real ordinary people from communities like I came from just didn't know anything, and once they knew something, that they were immediately ready to jump on board.